The china plates felt cool against my fingertips as I arranged them carefully around my parents' mahogany dining table. Through the kitchen doorway, I could hear Mom's voice carrying that particular tone, the one she reserved for explaining away disappointments. "Yes, Rebecca's here," Mom said into her phone, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a whisper but carried perfectly into the dining room. "She's between opportunities right now. You know how the job market is these days." I set down the last plate and moved to the silverware drawer, letting the familiar rhythm of preparation calm the tightness in my chest. The annual Chin family reunion. 3 years ago I'd dreaded it. 2 years ago I'd almost skipped it. This year I'd accepted the inevitable with something close to peace. "Between jobs." That was Aunt Linda's voice, sharp with curiosity. Still, wasn't she between jobs last year too? "It's complicated," Mom said, her discomfort palpable even from the next room. "The economy, you know. She's very particular about what she wants to do." I folded napkins into neat triangles, muscle memory from 1,000 family dinners taking over. Let them think what they wanted. The truth was so far beyond their understanding that explanation felt pointless. My sister Jessica breezed through the front door in a cloud of expensive perfume and designer confidence. Her heels clicked against the hardwood with the assured rhythm of someone who'd never questioned their place in the world. "Is she actually helping?" Jessica asked, not bothering to lower her voice. "Or just pretending to be useful?" "Jessica, please," Mom said, but there was no real reproach in it. I emerged from the dining room with a stack of serving bowls. Jessica looked me up and down, taking in my simple jeans and unmarked sweater with barely concealed disdain. "Still dressing like you shop at thrift stores, I see," she said, examining her manicured nails. "Some things never change." "Some things don't need to," I replied evenly, moving past her toward the kitchen. "That's the spirit of a chronic underachiever right there," Jessica called after me. "Just accept mediocrity and call it authenticity." Dad appeared from his study, already in his reunion mode, jovial, expansive, ready to show off his successful family to the assembled relatives. His smile faltered slightly when he saw me. "Rebecca. Good you're here early." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Listen, when people ask what you're doing these days, maybe just say you're consulting. It sounds better than nothing." "I'm not doing nothing, Dad." Right. Your little projects." He waved his hand dismissively. "But to people who don't understand, it might sound like unemployment. We don't want them to worry." "Worry about what?" "About you." He said it gently, the way you'd speak to someone who couldn't grasp simple concepts. "About whether you're okay. Whether we failed as parents somehow." Jessica laughed from the living room. Too late for that question. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the first relatives. Within 30 minutes, the house filled with the Chun clan, aunts, uncles, cousins, and the extended network of family friends who'd known me since childhood. Each arrival brought the same pattern. Warm greetings, catching up, and then the inevitable question. "So Rebecca, what are you up to these days?" And each time before I could answer, someone else would jump in. "She's taking some time to figure things out," Mom would say. "Still exploring her options," Dad would add. "Between opportunities" became the recurring euphemism. I watched Jessica work the room like a campaign event, her recent promotion to senior marketing director at a major firm serving as her conversation centerpiece. She'd position herself near me deliberately, creating contrast. "It's such a demanding role," Jessica was telling Uncle Robert and Aunt Mary. "But seeing campaigns go national, having that kind of impact, it's worth the 70-hour weeks." She glanced at me. "Though I suppose not everyone's cut out for that kind of pressure." "Rebecca always was more low-key," Uncle Robert said diplomatically. "That's one word for it," Jessica murmured, just loud enough. "Cousin David joined our cluster, fresh from closing a major real estate deal. The thing about success," he announced, "is that you have to be willing to take risks. Too many people play it safe and wonder why nothing happens." "Exactly," Jessica agreed. "Some people are just afraid of real responsibility." I excused myself to check on the food, ignoring Jessica's triumphant smile. In the kitchen, I found Aunt Linda and Mom in deep conversation. "Have you thought about suggesting something concrete?" Aunt Linda was saying. "Even just part-time retail to start? It would give her structure." "We've tried," Mom said wearily. "She just talks about her work, but nothing ever seems to come of it." I think she might be depressed. Oh, honey. Aunt Linda touched Mom's arm sympathetically. That's so hard. Has she seen someone? She won't admit there's a problem. I cleared my throat and they both jumped slightly. The pity in their eyes was worse than Jessica's contempt. Rebecca. We were just discussing my apparent psychological crisis. I finished, opening the oven to check the roast. I heard. We're worried about you, Mom said, her voice catching. It's been 3 years since you left that job and you haven't, you're not. Not what you expected, I supplied. I know. Back in the living room, the reunion was in full swing. Jessica had gathered an audience for what was clearly going to be another performance. The thing is, she was saying, in my position I network with incredible people. Just last week I had lunch with a Forbes 30 Under 30 recipient. Now that's the kind of company successful people keep. Jessica's always been ambitious, Aunt Mary said proudly. Not everyone has that drive. Some people are followers, some are leaders, Cousin David added. Nothing wrong with being ordinary. I sat down on the periphery of the group, content to let the conversation flow around me. Let them have this. What did it cost me really to be their cautionary tale? Where's Rebecca working now? This from Uncle James, who just arrived. The room went quiet for a beat. Jessica's smile turned sharp. Rebecca's on a bit of a sabbatical, Dad said carefully, taking time to reassess her goals. For 3 years. Uncle James looked genuinely concerned. Some people are late bloomers, Jessica said sweetly. Though at 32, you do have to wonder when the blooming starts. Laughter rippled through the group, not quite cruel but not quite kind either. At least she helps with family events, Mom said, trying to find something positive. She's very good at setting tables. More laughter, gentler this time but somehow worse for its sympathy. Cousin David leaned back in his chair, warming to the topic. You know what Rebecca's problem is? No vision. Success requires seeing the big picture, taking strategic risks. Some people just think too small. Or don't think about career at all, Jessica added. Some people are content just existing. Nothing wrong with simple living, Aunt Linda offered, but it sounded like consolation for a terminal diagnosis. The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. I was the official family failure, the cautionary tale, the proof that potential didn't guarantee results. They'd assigned me that role and nothing I could say would change the narrative they'd constructed. Dinner was announced and we all migrated to the dining room, the same room where I'd laid out those plates hours ago. I ended up seated between Aunt Mary and Uncle Robert, both of whom treated me with the careful kindness reserved for the fragile. So Rebecca, Uncle Robert said as we passed dishes, what do you do with your time these days? Hobbies? Interests? I work actually. Jessica snorted from across the table. On what? Your imaginary projects. I consult, I said simply. Consult. Jessica drew out the word mockingly. On what exactly? How to avoid employment. Jessica, Dad said, but his tone lacked conviction. No, I'm serious, Jessica continued. If Rebecca's working, why does she never talk about it? Why are there no business cards, no website, no evidence of this mysterious career? Some work doesn't require flashy marketing, I said quietly. Convenient excuse. Jessica turned to the table at large. Isn't that what all unemployed people say? That they're consulting or between opportunities? It's code for I gave up. That seems harsh, Aunt Mary said, but she was looking at me with that pitying expression again. Is it harsh to tell the truth? Jessica shot back. Look, I love my sister. But at some point we have to stop enabling this fantasy that she's got some secret successful life. She's unemployed. She has been for years. And the longer we all pretend otherwise, the longer she stays stuck. The table went silent. All eyes turned to me, waiting for a defense, a breakdown, something. I took a sip of water. May I have the potatoes, please? Jessica threw up her hands. See? This is what I mean. No ambition. No fight. No nothing. Dad changed the subject to Uncle James's new boat, and dinner proceeded with forced normalcy. But I'd been categorized now, officially filed under family concern with a side of disappointing child. After dinner, while I was clearing plates, I overheard Cousin David talking to a group in the living room. The economy's tough, sure, he was saying, but winners find a way. They network, they hustle, they make things happen. The people who fail are the ones who give up and make excuses. Rebecca's not even making excuses anymore, Jessica added. She's just accepted being a loser. Don't use that word, Mom said but weakly. What word should I use? Underachiever? Unmotivated? Face it, Mom. Some kids just don't turn out the way you hope. I loaded the dishwasher methodically, letting the voices fade to background noise. They needed this narrative. Jessica needed to be the successful daughter. My parents needed to explain away their confusion about me. The extended family needed a cautionary tale for their own children. What they didn't need was the truth. Aunt Mary found me in the kitchen, her face creased with concern. Rebecca, honey, can we talk? Of course. I want you to know that we don't judge you. Family is family, successful or not. I appreciate that. But I do worry. She took my hand. You're so isolated. No career, no social life that we can see. It's not healthy. Have you thought about talking to someone? There are therapists who specialize in... I'm fine, Aunt Mary. Really? But you're not, sweetie. You're not fine. You're alone and unemployed and hiding from the world. Her eyes welled with tears. We just want to help you. Before I could respond, Aunt Linda rushed into the kitchen, her face flushed with excitement. Turn on the TV, she practically shouted. Living room now. Everyone. The urgency in her voice pulled us all toward the living room. Uncle James already had the TV on, flipping through channels until he landed on CNN. The familiar news desk came into view and then... my face. Not a small photo. A full-screen image of me standing in front of the United Nations building, flanked by world leaders and humanitarian organization heads. Unprecedented achievement, the anchor was saying. At just 32 years old, Dr. Rebecca Chin has revolutionized global health infrastructure in developing nations, creating sustainable systems that have provided clean water and medical access to over 50 million people across 3 continents. The room went completely silent. The screen shifted to footage I recognized from 6 months ago. The opening of the water treatment facility in sub-Saharan Africa that had taken 2 years to develop and implement. Her innovative approach, the anchor continued, combines advanced filtration technology with community-driven maintenance programs, ensuring long-term sustainability without creating dependency on foreign aid. Another image flashed up, me shaking hands with the Secretary General of the UN. Dr. Chen's work has been praised by the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and numerous international development agencies. Her foundation, operating on what she calls radical transparency, publishes all financial data and outcome metrics publicly, setting a new standard for nonprofit accountability. Jessica made a small, strangled sound. The anchor smiled directly at the camera. And today, Time magazine has named Dr. Rebecca Chin their Person of the Year, citing her transformative impact on global health equity and her revolutionary model for effective humanitarian work. The screen filled with the cover. My face, professional and composed, under the banner, The Changemaker, How One Woman Revolutionized Global Health. Uncle Robert found his voice first. That's you. I nodded calmly, still holding the plate I'd been about to take to the kitchen. Dr. Chin joins a prestigious list, the anchor was saying, including world leaders, innovators, and activists. But what makes her selection particularly notable is the scope and measurability of her impact. Unlike many humanitarian efforts, Dr. Chen's work has demonstrable, trackable outcomes that have transformed millions of lives. The segment shifted to an interview clip, one I'd done reluctantly at the magazine's insistence. I don't do this for recognition, my TV self was saying. I do it because clean water and basic medical care shouldn't be privileges. They're rights. And we have the technology and resources to provide them. We just need to be willing to actually solve problems instead of managing them. Some have criticized your approach as too radical, the interviewer prompted. Good, TV me replied. If everyone's comfortable with your methods, you're probably not solving the real problem. Back in the living room, the news had moved on, but no one moved to change the channel. Your Person of the Year, Mom whispered. Time magazine Person of the Year. It's just a title, I said, setting down the plate. Dad couldn't finish the sentence. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands, typing frantically. There are dozens of articles. The New York Times, Washington Post, BBC, They're all covering this. Oh my God, Aunt Linda breathed. Rebecca, why didn't you say something? You never asked what I actually did, I replied simply. You asked if I had a job. Different question. Jessica's face had gone pale. You've been, all this time? Working, yes. Consulting, as I mentioned. I consult with governments, NGOs, and international organizations on sustainable infrastructure development. Cousin David scrolled through his phone, his expression growing more stunned by the second. You have a doctorate from MIT. A master's in public health from Johns Hopkins. You've published 17 papers in peer-reviewed journals on water sanitation and disease prevention. 18, I corrected gently. The newest one came out last month. You've given TED Talks, Aunt Mary said, staring at her own phone. Multiple TED Talks. With millions of views. Those were for fundraising primarily. The foundation needs visibility to attract donors and partners. Uncle James looked up from a tablet. Your foundation's annual budget is larger than some small country's GDP. We try to use resources efficiently. Mom was crying now, though I wasn't sure if it was from pride or shock or embarrassment. Rebecca, sweetheart, why didn't you tell us? I tried, Mom. You weren't interested in the details. You just wanted to know if I had a real job. But Person of the Year is a recognition of work that was already done, I said. The work matters more than the award. Jessica finally found her voice. Tonight I called you. I said you were unemployed, a loser, unmotivated. Yes, I heard. Her face crumpled. Rebecca, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. You thought I was exactly what I appeared to be from your limited perspective, I finished. It's fine. You weren't wrong to think what you thought given the information you chose to see. But we should have asked, Dad said, his voice hollow. We should have listened. Perhaps. I picked up the plate again. But I wasn't doing this for your approval. I was doing it because 50 million people needed clean water more than I needed you to understand my career choices. The TV had moved on to other news, but phones were buzzing all around the room as relatives discovered articles, videos, interviews, years of work that had been publicly documented for anyone who cared to look. Forbes ranked you as one of the top 50 philanthropists under 40, Uncle Robert read aloud. They estimate your foundation's impact at over $3 billion in economic development. The multiplier effect of health infrastructure is significant, I acknowledged. Aunt Linda was scrolling through photos on her tablet. You've met with presidents, prime ministers. Is that you with the Dalai Lama? He came to one of our facility openings in India. Very kind man. Jessica sat down heavily, her phone clutched in her hand. I told everyone you were a failure. I made you the family joke. And you're Person of the Year. Those two things aren't connected, I said. What you thought of me doesn't change the work. What the magazine thinks of me doesn't change the work either. The work exists separately from everyone's opinions about it. But I was so cruel, Jessica whispered. You were operating on incomplete information and your own insecurities, I replied. People do that. Mom approached me tentatively as if I'd become a stranger. Why didn't you correct us? All those times we introduced you as unemployed, all those pitying looks. Why did you let us think that? Because correcting you would have required explaining, and explaining would have required time and energy I preferred to spend on actual work. Your assumptions about my life didn't affect my life. They only affected your understanding of it. All this time, Dad said wonderingly, you've been one of the most influential people in global health and we thought you were unemployed. I was never unemployed. I left corporate consulting to start the foundation. That was always the plan. But you never told us the plan. I tried, Dad. 3 years ago when I gave notice I told you I was starting a humanitarian organization focused on infrastructure. You said I was throwing away my career. Mom cried for a week. Jessica told me I was being naive and stupid. I met their eyes calmly. So I stopped explaining. I just did the work. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence, broken only by the continued buzzing of phones as more relatives discovered the news. Cousin David cleared his throat. I said some things tonight. About success and taking risks and... You weren't wrong, I interrupted. Success does require risk. I risked everything. My savings, my reputation, relationships with people who couldn't understand the choice. Those were strategic risks based on careful assessment. You were right about that principle even if you misapplied it to me. I called you ordinary, he said quietly. Maybe I am. 50 million people have clean water not because I'm extraordinary, but because the solution was straightforward. We just needed someone willing to implement it without getting distracted by ego or politics. Uncle James was still reading articles. They're saying you'll probably win the Nobel Peace Prize next year. Multiple experts have mentioned you as the front-runner. Awards committees make their own decisions, I said. I can't control that. Can't control, Jessica laughed, a slightly hysterical edge to it. Rebecca, you're going to win a Nobel Prize and you're acting like it's no big deal. It's a big deal to the Nobel Committee. To me, it's a distraction from the work. I gestured around the room. Like this. This whole evening has been about your perception of success versus reality. But the reality is the same whether you understand it or not. 50 million people had their lives improved. That happened regardless of what you thought of me. But we should have known, Mom insisted, tears streaming freely now. We're your family. We should have supported you. You supported the version of me you could understand, I replied. I don't fault you for that. Understanding requires interest and effort, and you weren't interested in the details of international development work. You wanted me to have a recognizable career. When I didn't, you categorized me as failed and moved on. Aunt Mary was crying too now. I told you to get therapy. I said you were depressed and hiding from the world. I am hiding from the world, I agreed. From this world where success is measured by job titles and social media presence. I prefer the world where success is measured by water quality tests and infant mortality rates. The front door opened and more relatives arrived, late arrivals who hadn't been there for dinner. Aunt Linda immediately thrust her phone at them. Look, Rebecca's Person of the Year. The new arrivals went through their own version of shock and disbelief, pulling up articles and videos, trying to reconcile the quiet woman in jeans with the global humanitarian leader on their screens. Uncle Chin, the family patriarch, arrived last. At 83, he'd seen generations of family drama with philosophical detachment. He looked at me, then at the assembled relatives with their phones, then at the TV still displaying news coverage. Let me guess, he said dryly. You all spent the evening telling Rebecca she was a failure, and now you've discovered she's more successful than everyone here combined? Uncle Chin, Dad started. Don't. The old man waved his hand dismissively. I saw this coming 3 years ago. Rebecca has her grandmother's eyes. That woman rebuilt a village after the war with nothing but determination and intelligence. I knew Rebecca would do something similar. He approached me, his weathered face creasing into a smile. Person of the Year. Your grandmother would be proud. Thank you, Uncle Chin. Though I suspect you don't care much about the title. The title helps with fundraising, I admitted. Donors like supporting award-winning organizations. So in that sense it's useful. He laughed, a deep rumbling sound. Always practical. Yes, very much like your grandmother. He turned to the room at large. You want to know why you didn't see this? Because you were looking at Rebecca and seeing your own definitions of success. You wanted her to fit your understanding of achievement. She refused to shrink herself to match your limited vision. We just wanted her to be happy, Mom protested weakly. She is happy, Uncle Chin replied. She's just happy doing things you didn't value enough to notice. Jessica had been silent for several minutes, scrolling through article after article. There are profiles of you in every major publication. Forbes, Fortune, The Economist. They all call you a visionary. They call me what serves their narrative, I said. I'm not a visionary. I'm a problem solver who happened to solve a big problem. You've been invited to speak at the World Economic Forum, Cousin David read. You turned them down. 4 times, I confirmed. Those conferences are where people talk about solving problems. I prefer to spend that time actually solving them. Aunt Linda approached tentatively. Rebecca, I need to apologize. I was so condescending, so presumptuous. You were concerned, I interrupted. Misguided but concerned. I don't hold it against you. But I treated you like a charity case. You are a case for charity, Uncle Chin interjected. Just not the kind you thought. Rebecca showed you charity by not embarrassing you with the truth until you forced the issue. The evening devolved into a strange reception where relatives who'd pitted me hours ago now tried to process their whiplash. Some apologized profusely. Others tried to claim they'd always known I was destined for greatness. A few, like Uncle Chin, simply accepted the revelation and moved forward. Jessica cornered me in the kitchen while I was finally washing those dishes. "I don't know what to say," she began. "Then don't say anything," I suggested gently. "I built my entire identity around being the successful daughter. And it turns out I'm not even close to your level. We're not in competition, Jessica. Aren't we? Wasn't that the whole point of tonight? You letting me mock you, letting everyone pity you, and then revealing your person of the fucking year." "The point of tonight," I said carefully, "was having dinner with family. The time announcement happened to coincide with the reunion. I didn't plan some dramatic reveal. But you could have told us before. You could have prevented all of this." "Prevented what? You being honest about your opinions? Everyone revealing how they really saw me." I dried a plate slowly. "This wasn't punishment, Jessica. This was just reality. You thought I was a failure because that's what you needed to think to feel successful. The magazine naming me Person of the Year doesn't change who I've been for the last 3 years. It just changes your perception." He was crying now, makeup running. "I'm so ashamed." "Don't be. Be curious instead." I handed her a dish towel. "Be curious about why you needed me to be less than you. Be curious about what success actually means beyond titles and salaries. Be curious about what you might be missing when you judge people by surface appearances. How are you so calm about this?" "Because I knew who I was before tonight and I'll know who I am tomorrow. External validation doesn't change that." I glanced at her. "Does it change you?" He thought about that. "I don't know. Maybe it should." Later, as the reunion was winding down, various relatives approached with requests. Could I get them into exclusive events, introduce them to important people, help with their causes? I deflected politely, offering foundation contacts for legitimate charitable interests but maintaining firm boundaries. Mom found me putting on my coat to leave. "Don't go yet," she pleaded. "We need to talk about this properly. We just did for 3 hours. But I still don't understand. Why hide this from us?" "I didn't hide it, Mom. It was all public information. Multiple articles, speeches, the foundation website. It was all there for anyone who wanted to look. You just never looked because you'd already decided what my story was. That's not fair." "It's completely fair," I said, not unkindly. "You wanted me to have a conventional career you could brag about to relatives. When I chose differently, you stopped listening. You're not unusual in that. Most people do the same thing." Dad joined us in the foyer. "What happens now?" "Now I go home, prep for tomorrow's video conference with the Kenyan Health Ministry and continue my work. Same as always." "But everything's changed," he insisted. "Nothing has changed except your awareness. The work was happening before tonight. It'll happen after tonight. Your understanding of it is irrelevant to its existence." "That's harsh, Rebecca." "It's honest." I opened the door. "You're my family and I love you. But I can't live my life seeking your approval or fearing your judgment. I tried that for years and it was exhausting. So I stopped. I chose the work over your comfort. That was the right choice for me and for the 50 million people who benefited from it." "When can we see you again?" Mom asked, her voice small. "Next reunion probably. Unless there's a birthday or holiday. But we want to be part of your life." "You are part of my life," I said gently. "You're just not the center of it. The work is the center. You can either accept that and engage with who I actually am, or you can continue to be disappointed that I'm not who you wanted me to be. Either way, I'll still love you and I'll still do the work." I left them in the doorway, looking smaller somehow than they had at the start of the evening. Uncle Chin caught me at my car. "You handled that well," he said. "Did I? I feel like I broke something tonight." "You broke their comfortable illusions. That needed breaking." He patted my shoulder. "Your grandmother used to say, the people who love you for who they think you are will struggle when they meet who you actually are. Tonight they met you. Give them time to adjust. And if they don't adjust, then you continue being who you are and they continue being who they are and you love each other from that honest distance." He smiled. "It's not ideal but it's real. And real is better than pretend." I drove home through quiet streets, my phone buzzing periodically with messages from relatives. Some apologetic, some congratulatory, some confused. I'd answer them eventually in my own time, with the same patient honesty I'd shown tonight. The work would continue. It always did. Tomorrow there would be meetings about the sanitation project in Bangladesh, grant applications for the medical access program in rural India, and follow-up data from the water systems in Ethiopia. None of that changed based on magazine covers or family opinions. But tonight had clarified something I'd suspected for years. Validation from others was irrelevant to doing meaningful work. Whether my family understood or approved, whether magazines awarded titles or critics dismissed efforts, the work existed independently of all that noise. 50 million people had clean water because I'd chosen to solve a problem rather than manage perceptions. That would remain true whether Time magazine named me Person of the Year or whether my family thought I was unemployed. The work was the point. It always had been. Everything else was just commentary. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing quarterly reports in my downtown office. I almost didn't answer the unknown number, but something made me pick up. Hello, is this Sophia Martinez? The woman's voice was professional but slightly uncomfortable. Yes, this is Sophia. Hi, I'm Jennifer Walsh from Pristine Events. I'm the wedding planner for your brother David's wedding at the Ocean View Grand Resort. I set down my coffee cup. David hadn't spoken to me in months, not since our last family dinner where he'd made it clear I wasn't welcome at family gatherings anymore. Okay, what can I help you with? Well, this is rather awkward, but I received a call from your parents this morning. They've asked me to remove you from the guest list entirely. Her voice dropped slightly. They said, and I quote, "She's not family anymore and isn't needed at this celebration." I leaned back in my leather chair, gazing out at the city skyline through my floor-to-ceiling windows. I see. And what did you tell them? I told them I'd handle it professionally. I'm calling all affected guests personally. She paused. I'm sorry, Ms. Martinez. This must be difficult to hear. That's very considerate of you, Jennifer. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy with the Ocean View Grand Resort? Is everything meeting your expectations for the wedding? She seemed surprised by the question. Oh yes, absolutely. It's one of the most beautiful venues we work with. The staff has been incredible, the facilities are world-class. We're so fortunate they had availability for next Saturday. It's usually booked solid months in advance. That's wonderful to hear. I'm glad David chose such a nice place. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. Jennifer, I need to make a quick call. Can I call you back in about 10 minutes? Sure, that's fine. Again, I'm really sorry about this situation. After hanging up, I dialed my assistant. Maria, I need you to connect me with Jonathan Pierce at Ocean View Grand Resort immediately. Right away, Ms. Martinez. Within 2 minutes, Jonathan was on the line. As the general manager of the flagship property in my resort chain, he'd been expecting my call about the Martinez wedding booking. Sophia, I got your message about reviewing the event for this weekend. How would you like me to handle this? Jonathan, I want you to call the wedding planner, Jennifer Walsh from Pristine Events, and inform her that due to a scheduling conflict, the resort needs to cancel the Martinez wedding. Full refund of all deposits, of course. Explain that we've had a last-minute corporate buyout event that requires the entire facility. Understood. Should I offer alternative dates? No. Make it clear that we're unable to accommodate any future bookings for this particular client. I glanced at my watch. Also, please ensure that our other 6 resort locations in the area are informed that we cannot accommodate this wedding at any of our properties. I'll handle it immediately. Anything else? Yes, when you speak with Ms. Walsh, please be sure to mention that this decision came directly from the chain's owner. Don't elaborate beyond that. Of course, Sophia. Consider it done. I hung up and waited. Exactly 8 minutes later, my phone rang. Ms. Martinez? This is Jennifer Walsh again. I just received a very unexpected call from the resort. Oh, what did they say? They're canceling the wedding. Complete cancellation. They said there's been a last-minute corporate event that requires the entire facility. Her voice was strained with stress. This has never happened to me before. Never. I've been planning weddings for 12 years. That's terrible, Jennifer. What did they say exactly? The general manager said the decision came directly from the chain's owner. He was very apologetic but firm. No alternative dates, No other locations in their chain. Nothing. I could hear papers rustling. Ms. Martinez, I have a wedding for 200 people in 5 days and I have no venue. I don't know what I'm going to do. That does sound challenging. Did they give you any other details? Not really. Just that it was a corporate decision from someone high up the chain. She paused. Wait, did you say your last name was Martinez? Like the wedding? Yes, David Martinez is my brother. Oh my God. Ms. Martinez, I need to ask you something and please forgive me if this sounds crazy, but do you happen to know anyone who works with this resort chain? Any connections that might help us understand what happened? I smiled, looking at the framed photo on my desk from the ribbon-cutting ceremony when I'd acquired the Ocean View chain 3 years ago. Jennifer, can I share something with you? Please, anything that might help. The corporate buyout they mentioned? That would be my company. I'm the owner of the entire Ocean View resort chain. The line went completely silent for nearly 10 seconds. You own the resort chain? All 7 properties in the region, yes. I acquired them through my hospitality investment firm 3 years ago. But your family, they said you weren't family anymore. They made it sound like you were. She trailed off. Like I was what, Jennifer? Like you were struggling. Like you weren't successful. Your brother mentioned something about you having unrealistic dreams and your parents said you were finally learning to be realistic about your limitations. I laughed, but not unkindly. Jennifer, can I ask you to do something for me? Yes, of course. Could you conference in my brother? I think there's been some miscommunication in my family that needs clearing up. Are you sure? I mean, I'm just the wedding planner. This seems very personal. Trust me, this is the best way to handle it. Can you call him now? A few minutes later, David's voice joined the call. Jennifer? What's going on? Please tell me you've found a solution for the venue crisis. David, I have your sister Sophia on the line with us. What? Why? His tone immediately turned cold. Jennifer, I thought we made it clear that Sophia isn't involved in this wedding. We don't need her trying to insert herself into our celebration. David, I said calmly, Jennifer called to let me know I'd been removed from the guest list. Good. I'm glad she handled it professionally. We don't need any drama or attention-seeking behavior at my wedding. I agreed with that decision completely. No drama is important for such a special day. Jennifer's voice was tentative. David, there's something else we need to discuss about the venue. Right, this cancellation crisis. Jennifer, I don't care what it costs. Find us another high-end location. Money isn't an object. This is my wedding to Victoria and it needs to be perfect. David, I interjected. Before Jennifer continues, can I ask you something? Make it quick, Sophia. I'm busy dealing with a real crisis here, not whatever imaginary problems you're having this week. When you booked the Ocean View Grand Resort, did you research who owns it? What does that matter? Some big corporation. The point is it's exclusive and expensive, which reflects well on our family's status. Jennifer's voice was barely above a whisper. David, your sister owns the resort chain. The line went silent again. That's impossible, David finally said. Sophia works some basic office job. She lives in a tiny apartment. She drives a 10-year-old car. David, I said gently, I live in a penthouse downtown and I take car service most places because I'm usually working during commutes. The car you've seen is my weekend car that I use for grocery runs. This is ridiculous. Sophia, stop making things up for attention. Jennifer, I said, could you please read David the exact message you received from the resort's general manager? I heard papers rustling. He said, and I wrote this down word for word. Due to a corporate decision from the chain owner, we cannot accommodate the Martinez wedding at any of our 7 regional locations. 7 locations? David's voice had changed. How many properties are we talking about? The Ocean View chain has 7 luxury resorts in our area, I explained. Including the Grand Resort where your wedding was planned, the Ocean View Palms where Victoria's bridal shower was held last month, and the Ocean View Marina where your rehearsal dinner was booked. Another long silence. Sophia, David said slowly, are you telling me you own all of those places? I own the entire chain, yes. I acquired them in 2021 through Martinez Hospitality Holdings. Martinez Hospitality Holdings? My investment company. I named it after our family. Jennifer's voice was getting stronger as she began to understand the situation. Ms. Martinez, when the general manager said the owner made this decision personally. That was me, yes. After Jennifer called to tell me my family had decided I wasn't family anymore, I decided to respect that decision by not hosting family events at my properties. This can't be real, David said, but his voice had lost its certainty. If you own this chain, prove it. Jennifer, are you still there? Yes, Ms. Martinez. Could you call the Ocean View Grand Resort back? Ask for Jonathan Pierce, the general manager. Tell him you need to confirm details about the ownership situation. Should I disconnect this call? No, use three-way calling if you can. I think David should hear this directly. A few minutes later, Jonathan's familiar voice joined our conversation. Good afternoon, this is Jonathan Pierce. Mr. Pierce, this is Jennifer Walsh from Pristine Events. I'm here with David Martinez and his sister Sophia Martinez. There seems to be some confusion about the ownership of your resort chain. No confusion on our end, Jonathan said professionally. Ms. Sophia Martinez is the sole owner of all Ocean View Resort properties. She acquired our chain in 2021 and has been an exceptional owner. Is there something specific you need clarified? David's voice was barely audible. How much did those resorts cost? Jonathan paused. I'm not sure I can discuss financial details, but it was a significant acquisition. Over $200 million for the entire chain. The line went completely quiet except for the sound of David's heavy breathing. Mr. Martinez, Jonathan continued, I understand there was some confusion about the wedding booking. Ms. Martinez has instructed us to provide a full refund, which we're processing immediately. David. I said gently. Are you still there? Sophia, I don't understand. How do you own a $200 million resort chain? Where did that money come from? I've been building my investment portfolio since college. I started with small property investments and grew from there. The resort chain was my largest acquisition, but I have holdings in several other industries as well. But Mom and Dad said you were struggling. They said your business ideas never worked out. They said that because I don't talk about my work with the family. Every time I've tried to share my successes, the response has been dismissive or the conversation gets changed to someone else's achievements. Jennifer's voice was hesitant. Should I leave you two to talk privately? Actually, Jennifer, I have a question for you, I said. How quickly could you find an alternative venue for David's wedding? Ms. Martinez, with 5 days' notice and 200 guests? It would be nearly impossible to find something comparable to the Ocean View Grand. What if I told you I could guarantee you a venue that's even more exclusive? David's voice was sharp. Sophia, what are you doing? I'm being a good sister, David. Jennifer, there's an 8th Ocean View property that's not open to public bookings. It's my private resort on Catalina Island. I use it for executive retreats and special occasions. A private island resort? Jennifer's voice had gone up an octave. 40-acre property with a private beach, helicopter pad, and facilities for up to 300 guests. Full catering staff, event coordination, luxury accommodations for the wedding party and immediate family. David's voice was strained. Why would you, after everything we said? Because despite what happened today, you're still my brother. Anne Victoria deserves a beautiful wedding. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything right now, David. You're probably in shock. But here's what I propose. You and Victoria can have your wedding at my private resort, all expenses covered. Full luxury service, helicopter transport for the bridal party, everything you dreamed of and more. Jennifer was clearly taking notes. Ms. Martinez, this is incredibly generous. There's just one condition, I continued. David's voice was wary. What condition? I'd like to be invited to my brother's wedding. The silence stretched for nearly 15 seconds. Of course, David finally whispered. Of course you're invited. We need to talk. Really talk. We will. But first, let's make sure you have the wedding of your dreams. Jennifer, can you handle coordinating with my events team for the island property? Absolutely. Ms. Martinez, this is the most incredible turnaround I've ever experienced in my career. Jonathan, are you still on the line? Yes, Ms. Martinez. Please coordinate with Jennifer to arrange helicopter transport from your marina location to the island. Make sure the transition is seamless for all the guests. It would be my pleasure. After we'd finished coordinating the logistics, Jennifer and Jonathan left the call, leaving just David and me on the line. Sophia, David said quietly, I owe you the biggest apology of my life. David, we both made mistakes. I should have been more open about my success, and you should have asked more questions instead of making assumptions. But Sophia, we treated you terribly. All of us. Mom and Dad think you're struggling to pay rent. I know. I've been letting them think that because every time I tried to share good news, it was dismissed or minimized. It became easier to just let you all think what you wanted to think. How successful are you really? I looked around my office at the city view at the photos from various business acquisitions and charity events. My net worth is around $400 million, David. The resort chain is just one part of my portfolio. 400. He trailed off. Sophia, you're incredibly successful. I've been fortunate and I've worked very hard. All this time I thought you were just dreaming. That you hadn't figured out real life yet. I figured out real life differently than our family expected, but I did figure it out. David was quiet for a long moment. The wedding invitation. Sophia, that wasn't my idea. Mom and Dad convinced me that having you there would create drama, that you'd try to make the day about yourself. David, when have I ever tried to make family events about myself? Another long pause. Never. You've never done that. You usually sit quietly in the background. Exactly. I show up, I'm supportive, and I keep my own life private. Which we interpreted as failure instead of discretion. It seems that way. Sophia, can we start over? Can our family start over with you? I thought about all the years of dismissive comments, the assumptions, the way my achievements were minimized or ignored. But I also thought about David's voice right now, the genuine regret and shock. I'd like that, David. But it has to be genuine. No more assumptions about my life or my choices. And when I share something I'm proud of, I need it to be received with the same enthusiasm the family shows for everyone else's achievements. Absolutely. And Sophia, Victoria and we want to make this right. All of us. Then let's start with giving you both the most beautiful wedding celebration possible. You can make things right with the family afterward. The private island resort. Sophia, that's too generous. We can't accept something that expensive. I smiled, looking out at the city I'd helped reshape through my investments. David, it's not about the money. It's about family. And despite everything that's happened, you're still my family. We don't deserve this kindness. Maybe not, but you're getting it anyway. That's what family does. I need to call Victoria. Mom and Dad. They need to know. David, wait. Let me suggest something. Don't tell them about my business success yet. Let's just tell them the venue situation got resolved. After the wedding, when everyone's relaxed and happy, we can have a family conversation about everything. Why wait? Because right now they're going to be defensive and embarrassed. Let's give them a beautiful wedding celebration first, then address the bigger issues when emotions aren't running so high. You're probably right. You've always been the smart one in the family. We're all smart in different ways, David. We just haven't been very good at recognizing that in each other. 3 days later, I stood on the deck of my private resort, watching the sun set over the Pacific as the final preparations were completed for David's wedding. The island looked absolutely magical, with thousands of white lights strung between the palm trees, elegant seating arrangements on the beach, and a dance floor positioned perfectly to overlook the ocean. Victoria had cried when she first saw the setup. Sophia, this is more beautiful than anything I ever imagined. My parents had been quiet since arriving on the island, clearly overwhelmed by the luxury and exclusivity of the venue. They kept asking questions about how I'd arranged such an elaborate location, and I kept giving vague answers about having connections. The ceremony itself was perfect. David's vows brought tears to everyone's eyes, and Victoria looked absolutely radiant in her dress. As they exchanged rings with the ocean as their backdrop, I felt a genuine happiness for them that I hadn't expected after everything that had happened. During the reception, my father approached me at the bar. Sophia, this place, how did you manage to secure something like this? I've never seen anything so beautiful. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Dad. But the cost. This must have cost more than most people's houses. How are we going to pay for this? I smiled, sipping my champagne. Don't worry about the cost. It's handled. But Sophia, you can't afford something like this. Nobody can, except maybe billionaires. Dad, we agreed to have family conversations after the wedding. Tonight is about David and Victoria. He nodded, but I could see the questions churning in his mind. Later, during the dancing, my mother pulled me aside. Sophia, I need to apologize for the invitation situation. David told me what happened with the wedding planner. It's okay, Mom. No, it's not. We made assumptions about you, about your life, and we were wrong to exclude you. We can talk about all of this tomorrow. Tonight is about celebrating. But I feel terrible. You arranged this incredible celebration for David after we treated you so poorly. I looked around at the fairy tale setting, at David and Victoria dancing under the stars, at family members enjoying themselves in ways I'd rarely seen. Mom, seeing everyone happy like this is worth it. Family is complicated, but it's still family. You're a better person than any of us deserved. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do moving forward. The next morning, the entire family gathered for brunch on the resort's main terrace. The atmosphere was relaxed, with everyone still glowing from the previous night's celebration. So, my father said, setting down his coffee cup, I think it's time for some honest family conversation. David and Victoria exchanged glances. Dad, there are some things about Sophia that we need to discuss. Like how she managed to arrange all of this luxury. Among other things, David said carefully. I took a breath. Before anyone says anything, I want to be clear that I didn't arrange this celebration to prove a point or make anyone feel bad. I did it because I love this family despite our communication problems. Communication problems? My mother raised an eyebrow. Mom, when was the last time you asked me about my work? Really asked, not just made polite conversation. She was quiet for a moment. I suppose I assumed if something important was happening, you'd tell us. I tried to many times. But every time I shared good news about my business, the conversation got redirected to someone else's achievements, or I was told I was being unrealistic. My father frowned. That's not true. We've always been supportive. Dad, 2 months ago I tried to tell you about a major business acquisition I'd completed. You told me I should focus on getting a stable job with benefits instead of chasing dreams. Victoria spoke up quietly. What kind of acquisition? I looked around the table at my family, these people I loved despite everything. I bought a chain of luxury resorts for $200 million. The silence was absolute. $200 million? My mother whispered. The Ocean View Resort chain. 7 properties, including the one where you originally booked the wedding. David leaned forward. Sophia, tell them the rest. I own the resort we're sitting on right now. This is my private island. My father set down his coffee cup with shaking hands. Your private island. Along with various other real estate investments, technology companies, and financial holdings. My total net worth is approximately $400 million. My mother stared at me for a long moment. $400 million. Yes. And we told people you were struggling. We worried about your future. We excluded you from family events because we thought you were unsuccessful. I know. My father's voice was barely audible. How long have you had this level of success? I've been building my portfolio for 8 years. The major growth happened in the last 4 years. 8 years, he repeated. And we never knew. Because every time I tried to share it, I was dismissed or told to be more realistic. Victoria reached across the table and took my hand. Sophia, this explains so much about how you carry yourself. You have this quiet confidence that I always admired but couldn't understand. I learned early that my family wasn't interested in hearing about my business success, so I stopped sharing it. My mother was crying now. We failed you so completely. You didn't fail me, Mom. We just had different definitions of success, and we never took the time to understand each other's perspectives. But we excluded you from your own brother's wedding because we thought you were an embarrassment. David's voice was thick with emotion. And instead, she's the most successful person in our entire extended family. Success isn't just about money, I said gently. You've all built relationships, careers, families. Those are successes too. But the money. My father was struggling with the concept. $400 million, Sophia. That's generational wealth. It is. And I intend to use it responsibly, including supporting family when appropriate. Supporting family? My mother looked up through her tears. Dad, your accounting firm has been struggling since the recession, right? He nodded slowly. Business has been tough. What if I told you I could connect you with clients who need exactly the kind of personalized service you provide? Small to medium-sized businesses that value the personal touch over big corporate accounting firms. You would do that? After how we treated you? You're my father. Of course I would do that. I turned to my mother. Mom, your nonprofit work with literacy programs. What's your biggest challenge right now? Funding, she said immediately. We have the volunteers and the demand, but not enough resources to expand our programs. What if funding wasn't an issue? What if you had enough resources to implement every program you've dreamed of? Her eyes widened. Sophia, you can't just solve our problems with money. I'm not solving your problems. I'm offering to provide resources so you can solve them yourselves. There's a difference. David was shaking his head in amazement. Sophia, you're talking about changing our entire family's trajectory. I'm talking about what family does for each other when they have the resources and the opportunity. But we don't deserve this, my father said firmly. We treated you terribly. Deserve is a complicated word, Dad. Do any of us really deserve the good things that happen to us? Or do we just try to be grateful and use our opportunities responsibly? Victoria was wiping away tears. You're incredible. The way you're handling this, the grace you're showing. I've never seen anything like it. I've had time to think about this moment, I admitted. I knew eventually the truth about my success would come out. I decided long ago that when it did, I wanted to handle it with love instead of anger. My mother reached for my hands. How do we make this right? How do we rebuild our relationship with you? By starting fresh. By asking questions instead of making assumptions. By celebrating each other's successes instead of minimizing them. By being a family that lifts each other up instead of tearing each other down. Can you forgive us? My father asked. I looked around the table at these imperfect people who had raised me, supported me in their own limited ways, and yes, sometimes hurt me with their assumptions and dismissiveness. But they were also the people who had taught me values, encouraged my education, and shaped me into someone capable of building the success I'd achieved. There's nothing to forgive, Dad. There's only moving forward together. David raised his champagne glass. To moving forward together. And to Sophia, who taught us what real grace looks like. As we toasted, I felt something I hadn't experienced with my family in years. Genuine connection, honest communication, and hope for our future together. Later that afternoon, as the family prepared to return to the mainland, Victoria hugged me tightly. Thank you for giving us the most beautiful wedding imaginable. But more than that, thank you for giving our family a second chance. Thank you for welcoming me back into it, I replied. As the helicopter lifted off with my family aboard, I stood on the beach and watched them disappear into the sky. Tomorrow we'd begin the real work of rebuilding our relationships. There would be awkward conversations, learning curves, and probably some missteps along the way. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had my family back. And that was worth more than all the business success in the world. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Thank you for everything. But mostly, thank you for being the sister we didn't deserve but somehow got lucky enough to have. I smiled, looking out at the ocean, and typed back, thank you for being my family. Always. The conversation started innocently enough at Sunday dinner, the way these family gatherings always began before spiraling into subtle competitions and thinly veiled criticisms. Sarah had spent the first 20 minutes showing off photos of her latest home improvement project, a kitchen renovation that featured marble countertops, custom cabinets, and a backsplash that she'd been planning for months. It's amazing what homeownership allows you to do, she said, scrolling through her phone to display yet another angle of the pristine granite surfaces. The equity just keeps building month after month. Unlike some people who throw money away on rent every single month with nothing to show for it. Mom passed the potatoes and nodded approvingly, her face lighting up with maternal pride. Sarah's always been the smart one with money. Very practical about long-term investments and building wealth. She thinks ahead. I continued eating my dinner quietly, accustomed to these subtle digs about my apparent financial shortcomings. To the family, I was the underachiever, the one who worked at what they assumed was a small consulting firm, drove a modest Honda Civic that was 3 years old, and lived in what they believed was a rental apartment in a less prestigious part of town. Speaking of rent, Dad chimed in, cutting his steak with more force than necessary, maybe it's time you started thinking seriously about your future, Emma. You can't rent forever like some college student. At 29, most successful people are building equity and investing in real estate, not paying someone else's mortgage month after month. Sarah leaned back in her chair with a satisfied smile, clearly enjoying her position as the financially successful sibling. I mean, I totally get it. Not everyone has the credit score or down payment saved up for property ownership. The requirements are pretty steep these days. But there are first-time buyer programs available, even for people in your particular situation. The condescension dripped from every carefully chosen word. Sarah had always positioned herself as the accomplished sibling, the one who had her entire life mapped out and executed perfectly. She'd graduated from business school with honors, landed a prestigious marketing position at a major pharmaceutical company, and purchased her first house at 26 with what she claimed was careful financial planning and disciplined saving. Meanwhile, I was just Emma, the quiet one who kept to herself, never seemed to amount to much professionally, and appeared content with a modest lifestyle that screamed underachiever to anyone paying attention. The housing market is incredibly competitive right now, Uncle Robert added from across the table, always ready to pile on when the family discussed my various shortcomings. You need substantial income, perfect credit, and a significant down payment. It's definitely not for everyone. Some people just aren't cut out for that level of financial responsibility. I nodded politely and took another bite of green beans, my standard response to these weekly assessments of my life choices. You're all probably right about that. Don't get me wrong, Sarah continued, clearly relishing the spotlight and the opportunity to showcase her superior understanding of personal finance. There's absolutely nothing wrong with renting. Some people just aren't cut out for the responsibilities that come with homeownership. The constant maintenance, the property taxes, the insurance premiums, the HOA fees. It's a lot to handle, and it requires a certain level of financial sophistication. Mom reached over and patted my hand sympathetically, her expression mixing concern with disappointment. Maybe you could start small, honey. A little condo or townhouse. Something manageable. Work your way up gradually. If she can even qualify for a mortgage, Dad muttered, not quite under his breath but loud enough for everyone to hear. The family dinner continued for another hour and a half, with more detailed stories about Sarah's home improvements, her recent promotion to senior marketing manager, and her ambitious 5-year plan to upgrade to an even larger house in the suburbs with a 3-car garage and a swimming pool. I listened quietly, occasionally nodding when someone addressed me directly, maintaining the role I'd played for years. As we were clearing dishes and preparing dessert, Sarah cornered me in the kitchen while the others moved to the living room. I hope you don't take what Dad said too personally. He just wants to see you succeed and build something meaningful. We all do, really. I know, I replied, methodically rinsing plates and loading them into the dishwasher. If you ever want some advice about getting pre-approved for a mortgage or connecting with a good real estate agent, I'm totally happy to help. I know this amazing woman who specializes in helping first-time buyers, especially those working with more limited budgets. She's very patient and understanding about different financial situations. I smiled and thanked her for the generous offer, maintaining the facade that had become second nature over the years. The drive home gave me time to reflect on the evening's conversation and the familiar patterns that had emerged. This wasn't new territory. These family dinners had followed the same basic script for years. Sarah would showcase her latest achievement or acquisition. The family would praise her financial acumen and forward-thinking approach to wealth building, and I would sit quietly while they discussed my apparent lack of ambition and questionable life choices. What they didn't know, what none of them had any idea about, was that I'd been paying Sarah's mortgage for the past 2 years. It started small and innocuous the way these things often do. Sarah had called me in tears about 18 months after buying her house, explaining through sobs that her marketing job wasn't as stable as she'd initially believed. The pharmaceutical company was going through a major restructuring, her entire department was being eliminated, and she was facing a 3-month gap in employment while she searched for a new position. I don't know what I'm going to do, Emma, she'd sobbed over the phone, her voice breaking with desperation. The mortgage payment is $3,200 every month and I've only got enough in savings to cover maybe 6 weeks, maybe 8 if I really stretch it. I can't lose this house. Not after everything I went through to get it, all the sacrifice and planning. She'd begged me not to tell the family about her situation. Her carefully constructed image as the successful sister was everything to her, the foundation of her identity within our family dynamic. The thought of dad or mom knowing she couldn't afford her mortgage payments was absolutely unbearable to her. So I helped, initially viewing it as a temporary solution to a short-term crisis. I set up a monthly automatic transfer from my business account to hers, covering her $3,200 mortgage payment while she focused on finding new employment. It was supposed to be a brief arrangement, just until she got back on her feet and could resume normal payments. But then she found a new job that paid significantly less than her previous position. The marketing role at a smaller biotechnology company offered better long-term stability and growth potential, but it came with a substantial $30,000 annual pay cut that made her mortgage payments completely unmanageable on her new salary. She kept the house by continuing to accept my monthly payments, which she now framed as a temporary loan that she'd definitely pay back once her financial situation improved, and she either got promoted or found a higher-paying position elsewhere. That was over a year ago, and the payments had continued every month without interruption. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. While Sarah delivered lectures about building equity and the long-term benefits of homeownership, I was literally financing her version of the American dream. Every month, I transferred $3,200 to keep her afloat financially, while she basked in the family's admiration for her supposed financial success and planning capabilities. The consulting firm I supposedly worked for was actually a cover for my real business, a property management company that I'd built from the ground up over the past 5 years. I owned 17 rental properties scattered across the city, generating enough passive income that I could afford to subsidize my sister's lifestyle without significantly affecting my own financial stability or long-term investment plans. But explaining that reality would require revealing the entire web of lies and assumptions that had become the foundation of our family dynamic. Sarah couldn't admit she was struggling financially without destroying her carefully maintained image, and I'd grown tired of trying to prove myself to people who'd already decided I was the family disappointment. Monday morning brought my usual routine of reviewing rental income reports and maintenance schedules. I checked the overnight email from my property manager, Janet, who handled most of the day-to-day operations while I focused on acquisitions and strategic planning. My 17 properties were performing well, with occupancy rates above 95% and rental income continuing to increase with market rates. The Riverside property is getting multiple applications from qualified tenants, Janet reported during our weekly call. 3 different candidates, all offering above the listed rent. We could probably get $2,800 instead of the advertised $2,600, maybe even $2,900 if we're selective. I approved the increase and moved on to reviewing expense reports for recent renovations on a duplex downtown. Business was thriving, better than thriving actually. The strong real estate market meant my properties were appreciating in value while generating steady rental income that I reinvested in additional acquisitions. My phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah. "Thanks again for dinner last night. Mom absolutely loved seeing the whole family together like that. By the way, I'm super excited about the new backsplash. Already thinking about redoing the master bathroom next. You know how home improvement projects go, there's always something else to update." Smiling face with smiling eyes. I stared at the message for a long moment, processing the casual tone and the mention of another expensive renovation project. The bathroom upgrade would probably cost another $15,000 to $20,000, money she didn't have, that would inevitably be financed through credit cards or personal loans that she'd struggle to repay on her reduced salary. That evening I made a decision that had been building in my mind for months. I called Janet first, my voice steady and businesslike. "I need you to stop processing the monthly payment from Sarah Matthews for the Riverside property, effective immediately. The $3,200 monthly transfer that's been coming through automatically? Are you sure about this? I can set up a different payment method if there's an issue with the current banking setup." "No," I said firmly, my decision crystallizing as I spoke. "Stop accepting any payments from her entirely. Starting next month." Janet was confused but maintained her professional demeanor. "Understood completely. Should I send formal notice about the payment discontinuation, or will you be handling all communications directly?" I'll handle all notifications myself. Next, I called my accountant to discuss the tax implications of discontinuing the arrangement. The monthly payments to Sarah had been structured as family loans rather than rental income, which simplified the documentation and reporting requirements. The hardest call was to Sarah herself. "Emma, what's up?" she answered cheerfully, her voice bright with the confidence of someone who believed her financial support was guaranteed indefinitely. "We need to talk about the monthly mortgage payments," I said without any preamble or small talk. Her voice immediately became cautious and uncertain. "What about them? Is there some kind of problem with the transfer system?" "They're stopping. Next month will be the last payment." Silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds, broken only by the sound of Sarah's breathing becoming more rapid and shallow. "What do you mean stopping?" "Emma, I can't afford the full mortgage payment on my own. My current salary isn't nearly enough to cover it plus all the other monthly expenses. I thought we had an arrangement that worked for both of us." "We did have an arrangement. For 24 months. But I can't continue subsidizing your lifestyle indefinitely." "But I'm finally starting to get ahead financially," she protested, her voice rising with desperation. "The bathroom renovation will add significant value to the house. It's a smart investment that will pay for itself. And I'm really hoping for a promotion next year that could bump my salary back up to where it was before, maybe even higher." I listened patiently as she explained why this particular moment wasn't good timing, how she just needed a few more months to get everything properly sorted out and stabilized. The same explanations and promises I'd been hearing for 24 consecutive months. "Sarah, I can't keep subsidizing your mortgage while you lecture me about financial responsibility and the importance of building equity." "What are you talking about? I never lecture you about money or anything like that. Last night at dinner, you spent over an hour explaining why I should buy property and build equity instead of throwing money away on rent every month." Another long pause as the implications sank in. "That's completely different though. I was just trying to be supportive and helpful. Give you some friendly advice based on my own experience. Advice about homeownership and building wealth, while I pay your mortgage every month." Her voice became smaller and more defensive. "You know I appreciate everything you've done for me. I can't lose this house, Emma. It would absolutely destroy me professionally and personally. And if the family found out that I've been struggling financially, that I couldn't actually afford this place on my own, that's not my problem to solve anymore." The conversation ended badly, with Sarah crying and making increasingly desperate promises about revised repayment schedules and more realistic timelines for financial independence. I felt guilty about her distress but also relieved that the charade was finally ending. The pretense had gone on far too long. 3 days later, Sarah called an emergency family meeting. "I need to tell everyone something really important," she announced when we gathered at Mom and Dad's house Thursday evening. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept much over the past few days. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Mom asked immediately, her maternal instincts activated by Sarah's obvious distress. Sarah took a shaky breath and looked around the room at all of us. "I've been having some serious financial difficulties. More significant than I've let on to anyone. The truth is, I can't afford my mortgage payments on my current salary, and I've been getting financial help to keep the house." Dad leaned forward in his chair, his expression shifting from concern to confusion. "What kind of help?" "A second mortgage. A personal loan from the bank. Emma has been paying my entire mortgage for the past 2 years." The room went completely silent, as if all the air had been suddenly sucked out of the space. Uncle Robert was the first to find his voice. "Emma? Emma? The one who?" I nodded calmly, meeting his incredulous stare. "The monthly payments were $3,200. I've been covering her complete housing costs since she lost her first job after buying the house." "But you don't even..." Dad started, then stopped himself as he realized what he was about to say. "Own property? Have a successful career? Make enough money to help anyone else?" I filled in the blanks he was struggling with. "Right." Mom looked completely bewildered, as if the fundamental assumptions about our family had suddenly been turned upside down. "How could you possibly afford to pay Sarah's mortgage? Your job at that little consulting firm?" "My consulting firm manages $12 million in residential real estate assets. I personally own 17 rental properties throughout the city. Sarah's mortgage payment represents approximately 8% of my monthly rental income. The revelation hit the room like an explosion. Sarah was crying quietly, embarrassed by the public exposure of her financial dependence. Dad's face had gone through several distinct color changes as he processed the information that completely contradicted everything he thought he knew about my financial situation. 17 properties? Uncle Robert repeated weakly as if saying the words might make them make more sense. Started with a duplex 5 years ago. Used the rental income to qualify for investor loans on additional properties. Pretty standard wealth-building strategy in real estate investment. Janet had prepared a portfolio summary for exactly these kinds of situations. A single page showing property locations, acquisition dates, current market values, and monthly rental income. I pulled it from my purse and placed it on the coffee table where everyone could see it. Dad picked up the document with visibly shaking hands. This says your properties are worth over $4.2 million in total. Current market assessment. I confirmed matter-of-factly. Though property values have been rising pretty consistently over the past 18 months, so that number is probably conservative. Sarah wiped her eyes with a tissue, her embarrassment now mixed with something that looked like resentment. I never meant for it to go on this long. I kept thinking I'd get a better job or a significant promotion, or something that would let me pay Emma back and handle the mortgage payments myself. Why didn't you tell us Emma was helping you financially? Mom asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because you all think she's the family failure, Sarah snapped, her embarrassment suddenly turning to defensive anger. Every single family dinner is about how successful I am and how Emma needs to get her life together and start making better choices. How was I supposed to explain that the successful sister needed financial support from the unsuccessful one? The room fell quiet again as everyone absorbed the full implications of what had been revealed. So when you've been giving me advice about building equity and buying property? I said to Sarah, letting the sentence hang in the air. I know exactly how it sounds, she said miserably. I wanted to keep up the image, you know? I worked so incredibly hard to buy that house, and when I couldn't afford it anymore, I couldn't bear to admit failure to everyone. Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. Emma, I owe you a serious apology. We all do. We've been completely wrong about your situation for years. Wrong about a lot of things, I agreed, my voice remaining calm and measured. But why didn't you ever say anything? Mom asked, her confusion genuine. All these years of us thinking you were struggling financially, making assumptions about your career? Because it didn't matter what any of you thought about my success. I didn't need your approval or recognition to build a profitable business. But I did get tired of funding Sarah's lifestyle while she lectured me about financial responsibility. Uncle Robert was still staring at the property portfolio document. You've been carrying all of this financial success quietly for years while you what? Made assumptions? Offered unsolicited advice? Treated me like the family disappointment. I shrugged. Real estate investment isn't particularly dramatic or exciting. You buy properties, maintain them properly, collect rent and reinvest the profits. It's boring and steady, which doesn't make for exciting dinner conversation. Sarah looked up from her tissues. What happens now? With the house, I mean. That's your problem to solve, I said firmly. You have 30 days to figure out how to cover your mortgage payment without my financial support. I can't afford it on my current salary. You know that's impossible. Then sell the house. Downsize to something you can actually afford on your income. Or find a way to increase your earnings. But I'm not subsidizing your lifestyle anymore. The family meeting ended with a lot of uncomfortable silence and half-hearted apologies that felt more obligatory than genuine. Dad promised to be more supportive and less judgmental in the future, while Mom insisted she'd always believed in my potential, despite all evidence to the contrary. Uncle Robert asked for investment advice, which felt particularly ironic given his previous commentary about my financial prospects. Over the following weeks, Sarah explored her limited options with growing desperation. She listed the house for sale and started looking at smaller condos and townhouses that would fit within her actual budget. The elaborate bathroom renovation plans were quietly abandoned, along with several other home improvement projects she'd been planning. The hardest adjustment for her seemed to be accepting the reality of living within her actual means. For 2 full years, my financial support had allowed her to maintain a lifestyle that significantly exceeded her income. Without that safety net, she was forced to make real choices about spending priorities and lifestyle expectations. At the next family dinner, the entire dynamic had shifted dramatically. Instead of Sarah showing off expensive home improvement projects and dispensing financial advice, the conversation focused on her house hunting process and plans for downsizing to a more manageable living situation. Dad asked thoughtful questions about my real estate business operations, while Mom wanted to understand how I'd managed to build such a successful portfolio so quietly. "I still can't believe you never said anything about your success," Sarah admitted over dessert, her voice carrying a mixture of admiration and resentment. "All those times we made comments about your career prospects or your apartment." "I live in a one-bedroom apartment because I don't need much personal space," I explained patiently. "My money goes toward acquiring income-producing assets, not lifestyle inflation or impressing other people." "But you could afford a much nicer place, a luxury condo or a house." "I could afford a lot of things. That doesn't mean I should buy them just because I can." The conversation that evening was fundamentally different, more honest, less performative, with genuine curiosity replacing the previous pattern of subtle competition and judgment. Sarah was still adjusting to her new financial reality, but she seemed somewhat relieved to drop the exhausting pretense of effortless success. A month later, she found a qualified buyer for her house and purchased a smaller condo that fit comfortably within her actual budget. The equity from the sale paid off her accumulated credit card debt and provided a modest emergency fund for future unexpected expenses. "It's actually really nice," she told me when I helped her move into the new place. "Smaller obviously, but I don't have to constantly worry about affording the monthly payments. And no more pretending to be something I'm not financially." The family dynamics continued to evolve gradually. Dad started asking for my opinion on financial matters and investment strategies, while Mom seemed genuinely interested in understanding how I'd built my business so successfully. Uncle Robert, perhaps most transformed by the revelation, had become almost deferential in his interactions with me. But the biggest change was in my relationship with Sarah. Without the financial dependence and the constant need to maintain false appearances, we could finally be completely honest with each other about our respective situations. She was working diligently on rebuilding her financial stability and independence, while I was learning to be more open about my successes and long-term goals. The Sunday dinners became more balanced conversations, with everyone contributing their perspectives rather than one person dominating with carefully curated achievement stories. Sarah talked openly about her job search for a position with better compensation, while I shared updates about property acquisitions and market trends. "I still feel absolutely terrible about all those years of taking your money while simultaneously criticizing your life choices," Sarah said during one of our private conversations several months later. "It taught me something valuable," I replied thoughtfully. "Family support shouldn't come with strings attached or expectations, but it also shouldn't enable people to avoid facing reality indefinitely." Looking back, the 2 years of secret financial support had been both manageable from a business perspective and emotionally exhausting on a personal level. I'd gained important insights into the difference between helping someone through a genuine temporary crisis and subsidizing their permanent lifestyle choices that exceeded their actual means. Sarah's house sale closed on a Tuesday afternoon in November. That evening she sent me a text message. "First mortgage payment on the condo, paid entirely from my own account. Feels absolutely amazing. Thank you for everything you did and for finally saying no when you needed to." The message felt like closure on a chapter that had defined our relationship for far too long. Sarah was learning to live authentically within her means, while I was learning to set appropriate boundaries that protected both my financial resources and my emotional well-being. The family had adjusted to a completely new understanding of everyone's actual circumstances and capabilities. No more assumptions about success or failure based purely on outward appearances or lifestyle choices. No more lectures about financial responsibility from someone who couldn't afford their own supposedly successful lifestyle. Most importantly, no more monthly transfers to maintain someone else's carefully constructed illusion of prosperity while being treated as the family disappointment who couldn't get her life together. That felt definitely worth celebrating.